Hi, I'm Figment, and today is going to be the start of a series of videos about the Subtractor. A friend of mine mentioned that some previous videos I'd made were involving some larger topics like multiband compression and um, kind of a modular synthesis setup, um, and that a lot of these other videos, the synths that were involved were all subtractors, but I didn't have an actual video about the Subtractor. So I definitely took note of that and have come back to start this series of videos about the Subtractor. Now I know the Subtractor is a really old synthesizer in the sense that it's kind of been in with Reason since the very first version of Reason. I think we're like on 8 now or so. So a lot of you may be completely familiar with the Subtractor, but some people may not. So this tutorial is not for everyone, and neither will these following videos about this be for everyone, but there will be some people out there, of course, who are not very familiar with the Subtractor and could be useful to them. So this is going to have to be a multi-part video because I couldn't even do 20% of the Subtractor in one video and really explain it and do it any real justice. So this is probably going to be I don't know, 4-part series, a 6-part series. I'll try and keep it below a 10-part series. That just sounds like a lot, but you probably could make a 10-part series about the Subtractor. It's kind of that dense when you really kind of get around to it. But anyway, for the sake of simplicity and time, I am going to take this part by part, and let's jump right in. So here we have a Subtractor. It's a polyphonic synth, mono out, so it doesn't output in stereo. It uses subtractive synthesis, which is a form of synthesis used by a lot of classic synthesizers that we know and love. That's kind of a brief overview of like bio on the Subtractor, but I'm sure it could be more dense than that. I'm just going to jump right into the front of this panel. Two things we're going to run over today real fast is signal flow. It's the most important thing, I think, the framework from where we should start from. Where does sound start? Where does sound end on the Subtractor? And then we'll briefly talk about the oscillator section, which I suppose would follow next. So signal flow is very simple on the Subtractor. You have your oscillator section here, and this is kind of the source of sound, the beginning of sound in the Subtractor, where you have oscillator 1, oscillator 2, and a noise oscillator. The sound starts here. It goes from the oscillator section into the filter section, which immediately is filter 1. Now, there is filter 2, but filter 2 right now is currently off. So filter 2 is off. When the sound comes into filter 1, it just goes straight past filter 2 to the master out, which would be this little level knob here. If filter 2 was on, once it left the oscillator section, hit filter 1, it would then go to filter 2, then it would go to the master out. Simple enough, that's kind of signal flow in the Subtractor. So, I have a little rising and falling scale here. Really simple. I'm just keeping that there just so we can talk about sound and you can kind of hear the Subtractor, hear what it is I'm explaining. The Subtractor has 4 of your classic wave types: sawtooth, square, triangle, and sine. After that, it has a bunch of special waves that are variations of your sine, triangle, square, and sawtooth. Those special waves aren't shown graphically, but they're shown with numbers like 5, 7, 10, 11, 15, all the way up to 32. So I'm going to play play some of these waves and run this scale, and you can hear the difference between the waveforms offered in the Subtractor. And so on, all the way up to 32. It's quite a lot of waveforms to choose from, quite a colorful palette. Both oscillators work the same way, so you get the same 32 there and the same wave offered here. You have your oct, semi, and cent. This is your tuning section. So if it's on 4 and 0, 0, then it'll play the native note that you press. So if you press C2, it's going to play C2. If you move the octave up 1 to 5 and you press C2, it's going to play C3, even though you pressed C2. If you bring it down 1, it's going to play C1, even though you're pressing C2. That's your octave tuning. Semi-tuning would then be individual notes in between, not the octave up like C3 or C or whatever note. You could press D, it would then press D3, but it wouldn't be an octave up, it would be notes over. So if you said 2 notes over or 2 up, and if you pressed C, it would play E. If you press 2 down, it would press, oh, well, there is no down. Well, I suppose you can only go semi up. So yeah, it would be up. So if it's 5, then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it would play G above. And cent is not any individual notes up, but it's the space in between notes. So if you pressed C, it would play some frequency in between these two notes. I can't even tell you what that is because that key is not really there. It's just a tuning situation. Keyboard tracking, this little light here, KBD track, tracks what key you play on your MIDI controller or keyboard, and it plays it. So you take keyboard tracking off, doesn't care. So I mostly keep keyboard tracking on because I need it for musicality. This mix knob is, well, let's turn oscillator 2 on. It's a mix, a level of volume between oscillator 1 and oscillator 2. So all the way to the left is oscillator 2 completely, all the way to the, it's oscillator 1 completely, all the way to the right is oscillator 2 and your noise oscillator. So if you turned off oscillator 2 but turned on noise, all the way to the right would be your noise oscillator, all the way to the left would be your oscillator 1, and in between would be any mix between the two. That's what your mix knob does. The noise oscillator is fairly simple. Decay is how short or how long the sound is. The shorter the knob to the left, or the more the knob to the left, the shorter the sound. The more the knob out to the right, the longer the sound is going to take before it dies out or decays. Color is the two types of noise offered. All the way to the right is white noise, all the way to the left is pink noise, and anywhere in between is some mix between white and pink. Level is the level of the noise oscillator. So this would be full volume, this would be no volume, and then anywhere in between those two options. I want to talk about phase next and frequency modulation, but that in and of itself is probably going to take a video and a half. Well, maybe just half a video. Because the kind of phase, you have to explain phase, and frequency modulation, you have to explain frequency modulation. I'll probably explain that when I explain the filter section and what these filter settings do. But until then, since we are running low on time, have some fun, experiment with the Subtractor, and I will talk to you later.